You've been crunching the numbers, you've been looking at the details. What is your current assessment of Europe's abilities to defend itself if the US were to pull back today?
Well, the issue is that Europe simply hasn't been even envisaging the possibility of having to go to war without the U.S. in the past decades. And so what we see today is that it fully relies on the U.S. for a number of things that it simply does not have the capacity to do today on its own. And those are the strategic enablers, as they are called, which are strategic communications, intelligence, space communications, but also air and missile defense. And so there are simply a number of things for which Europe would need several years, sources tell us at least 5 years, to be able to hold their own without the U.S.
OK, so that's a bit of the time frame, Andrea, then, at least 5 years. Can you kind of flesh that time frame out for us? How does that apply across different military capabilities in Europe? Is that the timeline we should be thinking about? 5 years before Europe can really defend itself against Russian aggression?
So defending a continent is so complex that there are many layers of things that Europe would need. So if you think in terms of what happens if Europe is attacked, and today what defense officials are telling us is that for a number of things like as simple as ammunition, Europe would probably falter within days or weeks. So there are very simple things that Europe needs right now, which are stocks, infinite amounts of ammunition. That's what our sources tell us. So ammunition, that is something that can be ramped up fairly quickly. Then there are more complicated things like logistics. How do you get tanks to the front line? How do you airlift them? How do you develop sufficient intelligence capacities, space intelligence? Those are things that need a lot more time. And one of the biggest issues Europe has right now are air defense capabilities. And the problem with air defense is that it is extremely costly and also very sophisticated. So for those things, definitely we're thinking in terms of years and hundreds of billions of dollars or euros.
Andrea, what is the current level of dependency that Europe has on the US when it comes to some of these military capabilities? And is Europe thinking about continuing to purchase hardware from the US in the long term, or are they trying to build out supply chains to have full capabilities in Europe, ex-US?
Well, if you think in terms of the full defense of the continent, there's one thing that Europe is almost fully dependent on the US for, and that's the nuclear umbrella. Right now, the whole continent of Europe is protected by the US nuclear umbrella. And so we've seen first overtures by President Emmanuel Macron, for example, who is thinking of offering the French nuclear umbrella to more countries in Europe. But obviously, even if the UK and France do have nuclear capabilities, it's no match for the US nuclear arsenal. So that's the first thing. And then, obviously, it's a whole debate right now in Europe whether to buy European or to continue buying from third countries. And the truth is, even if Europe is going to probably try to focus on its own industry in the next few years, there are certain things that it's just too dependent on the US for right now. And air defense is one of these things.